My name is Erica Mones, and I wanted to interview some fellow YouTubers because I find YouTube to be an interesting platform. The digital age in general has afforded disabled people opportunities that they would not have otherwise, but YouTube is unique in that it affords disabled people the opportunity to produce long-form content on their own, and it is also a very intimate form of media. Unlike traditional forms of media like the movies or TV or magazines, people don't have to rely on a middleman like a casting agent to decide to cast them in a movie. Instead, they can just produce their own content. I mean, all you really need to do YouTube is either a laptop and a camera, or even just a smartphone and internet connection, and obviously also something you have to say or something you want to put out into the world. In this way, YouTube has really paved the way for disability representation. And while there has been an increase in disability representation in film and on TV, and even like in modeling campaigns, Hollywood continues to be largely inaccessible to disabled people, especially when it comes to what many people deem as like unpalatable disabilities. For instance, people with speech impairments, or people with facial differences, or really anybody who doesn't fit society's mold. And that is why I really like YouTube as a platform. I started my YouTube channel on a whim. It was during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I had recently graduated college, and I could not find a job. Like, I went on multiple job interviews, but I didn't get any, and I think that has a lot to do with disability discrimination. So suffice to say, I was pretty lonely, and I didn't know what to do with my life because I felt very isolated, and I felt like no matter what I did, like, I couldn't overcome society's perceptions of disability. And when I say that, I want to make it clear that I do not believe in overcoming disability. That's an ableist trope, but I do believe that society has a lot of ableist misconceptions about disability that makes it really hard for disabled people to succeed. And I really missed living on a college campus where I had a social life at the tip of my fingers. I had watched a few limited mobility workouts, but I didn't see any that were for people with cerebral palsy in particular, which is his disability I have, and the reason why that to me was an issue is that with CP, like, you can have multiple muscle groups be affected. So just because somebody made a workout that had people who are paraplegic in mind does not necessarily mean it's suitable for people with cerebral palsy, because like you may have limited mobility in your arms. So I basically just I became the representation that I wanted to see. And I don't say that to sound like I think so highly of myself, but I think what's so great about YouTube is that you can just easily become the representation that you need. Thank you so much for speaking with me. Can you tell me why you started YouTube?
I started it to like educate people about people with disabilities and try to be an advocate about like the things we go through and the things we need, and like how Social Security isn't fair, and like how getting insurance and stuff isn't fair and all that stuff.
Yeah. And have you ever received any negative comments?
No, I haven't received any negative comments yet.
Yeah, it's rough when you do. And how has being on YouTube impacted you?
It made me more confident, actually. Before doing YouTube, I was not confident at all with showing my disability and showing how I do things and stuff like that. And it gave me more confidence because I see that I am teaching people and stuff like that.
And do you know of any other disabled YouTubers? And if so, who is your favorite?
It's a couple. I think it's Cole and Charisma.
Yeah.
I love them. And I think you said Chelsea Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how often do you talk about your disability on your channel?
I try to do it very often. I try to incorporate it in like every video. Like I do doctor's appointments and stuff like that. And like when I get new equipment, or if I find something that's that makes something easier for me to do, and like I will like link it in there and stuff to help others.
And what do you hope your audience gains from watching your channel?
Understanding of people with disabilities and what we go through on a daily, and to see that we're the same just as someone that can walk, like we're no different.
What would your advice be to somebody who's disabled and wants to start a YouTube channel?
Just go for it. Just go for it. Do it. Because I honestly did not think anybody will watch my videos or anything like that, and I have 100 subscribers now. So just go for it. Just do it. Believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself. That's all that matters, is believing in yourself. Forget everyone else.
Did you? How did you feel about your disability growing up?
Growing up, I wasn't okay with it because I didn't stop walking until I was about 7. So I always knew of walking, and then I had to transfer into not being able to do the same things or do things for myself. So growing up, it was hard. And then certain people just made it even harder. So once I would say I got to senior year of high school, maybe when I started going to college, is when I started accepting my disability. So.
And did you see positive representation of people with disabilities while growing up, or no?
Well, it's kind of weird. So I never really saw people with disabilities growing up. I only saw them in school, and in school it was really segregated. Like the people with disabilities are like on a whole other end of the school. They're like, there wasn't really any people with disabilities in the general ed classes. Once my dad fought for me to get put in general ed classes, that's when I felt I saw more people with disabilities. And then now I honestly see way more people in public with disabilities, and I love that because I never saw that growing up.
Yeah, it can definitely make a difference when you see other people.
Yeah.
And those were all my questions. Is there anything else you would like people to know?
The only thing I would like people to know is to don't judge anyone. Always give people a chance. Especially don't judge people with disabilities, because we are all the same. We may do things a little different, but we're all the same. So there's no judgment. We should all be treated equally.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for speaking with me.
No problem. You're welcome. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye.
I think it's interesting to think of the life course model that we looked at in class. I don't remember what week it was, but I will link it in the description. But and I think technology has changed a lot for emerging and disability advocates, because we have more access to more people. So like before the internet, we had people like Ed Roberts and Judy Human that had to like look up each other's phone numbers and call them on the phone. But now you can literally just pull out your smartphone and find some disabled people on Instagram or YouTube who are doing some really cool things. And that was kind of how I connected with some fellow disabled YouTubers. Is I just messaged them on Instagram and was like, would you want to be a part of this project? And they said yes. So yeah. And one theme I noticed in a lot of the participants was that they wanted to start their YouTube channels to give back to the community. For instance, Kyra wanted to connect with other disabled people and also teach non-disabled people that disabled people are still people who often want the same things as their non-disabled peers. I think it's interesting that Kyra mentioned that she didn't know a lot of other disabled people before she was in late high school or early college. So according to her, again, if we're looking at the life course model, her moment would be when she was in late high school or early college, and according to her, then that was when she first really learned to accept her disability, and that was also around the time where she was meeting other disabled people. So could you tell me why you started a YouTube channel?
Well, I started a YouTube channel because I created a company called Peer Performance, and that company is a hub for individuals with disabilities, more specifically limited mobility, and just understanding the realms of marketing and how to reach people with different channels. I figured a YouTube channel would be good to be able to educate people and inform people of everything that's going on within the community. So my company is a mobile app. So what we do is we teach like wellness. So that's physical therapy, occupational therapy, mental health, and all those things on our mobile app. So one of my things is when I was going through, I wasn't always paralyzed. I got paralyzed in a car accident after leaving the United States Marine Corps. And as I was going through rehabilitation, I realized that there weren't much of available resources for people with disabilities that were affordable and easily accessible. There were a lot of fragmented resources, and I wanted to bring together all the resources under one roof. So that was the motivation behind starting the business that I started.
Yeah, and I saw her workout video, and I really liked it because a lot of times videos are like for people of like one level of mobility, and not
Correct.
everybody can do that. So,
yes. And that's one of the things too we want to further like explore is the different types of mobility, because we know we have like the quadriplegia, paraplegia, spinal bifida, MS. Like there's a whole realm of things, and everyone has specific limitations. So we figured that we just go with one, and for people to be able to maneuver and manipulate it as needed. But I definitely think a YouTube channel was needed because, like I'm the voice, and we're the voice of a community. And like this community is already underrepresented, and every person, every YouTuber, every influencer that's out there, they help get the word out about things that we're going through, complaints that we have, and obstacles that we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, and has starting a YouTube channel changed the way that you view yourself?
No, it just kind of motivated me. It motivated me to do more because of the feedback from the community. Like just sometimes reading the comments and figuring out other ways to be able to do things for people. Like for example, I just had a surgery done, and a lot of people didn't know that the surgery existed. But for me, it's drastically increased the quality of my life. So I'm realizing that just exposure and education about certain topics, it's really helping out more people than I even realized. So I just use it as a platform to be able to spread knowledge and be a resource to others. So it has helped me feel more like purpose driven. I feel like I'm making an impact when I do certain videos, especially like reviewing certain products or talking about things that I think multiple people might go have problems with. So definitely.
Yeah, and have you ever received any negative comments on YouTube?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, YouTube, social media, negative stuff. Not per se really negative, but it's just people just being ignorant to understanding things. Just and some people just making fun of certain things like leg day, like being able to do leg day, like if you exercise. Oh, I bet you don't do leg day because you're in a wheelchair. But like I feel like if you're gonna put yourself out there in the public, you have to be prepared for those things. So you have to have tough skin.
Yeah, it can be really annoying when people like leave certain comments, and I'm just like, just don't say that.
Yeah.
And what do you hope that people take away from your YouTube channel?
Well, we haven't really. I haven't really been like really creating like YouTube videos just for that. I've been more or less just sharing a lot of stuff on my social platforms. But this year in 2022, we have a content strategy, and our goal is to execute and create quality content. So I'm just hoping that we can grow it, and we could not only just entertain people, but also educate people that are disabled, but also people who aren't disabled. So they're not really ignorant to a lot of the things that are going on in our community.
Yeah, and do you know of any other disabled content creators? Like, who is your favorite?
Wheels to Walking. Have you ever heard of him, Robert Corbett?
No.
If you write down Wheels to Walking, and search him up on YouTube, he's pretty cool. Wheels to number 2 and then Walking. He's a wheelchair YouTuber, so he's probably my favorite. And if you reach out to him, you can say, "Hey, Kenneth said he was his favorite." It's a good friend of mine, but he has millions and millions and millions of views on his videos. So,
oh my gosh!
Yeah.
And what would your advice be to any other disabled person who comes across your content?
Like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions or any concerns, to message me. I respond to most people. If not right away when I could get around to it. I put myself out there for a reason, to be a resource, and I feel like anyone who wants to try something new, just go for it.
Yeah. And if you could start over, what would you do differently, if anything?
I would have a better strategy. So I would create content with the intent to create content. When I first started making it, I just was posting random videos. I didn't really have a strategy on what I wanted to do. So now going forward in 2022, I have a clear plan, as in lifestyle, education, nutrition, mental health, tips and tricks, other things like dressing, bathing, driving. So I have a whole strategy and where I want to be able to create content, not just whatever comes to mind.
Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
You're welcome.
And that's all I really had to ask.
Okay, thank you. Nice meeting you, and thank you. I appreciate it.
You too. Bye.
Take care.
Henny wanted to create accessible workouts and information regarding health and fitness for other disabled people. He also wanted to teach non-disabled people what not to say to disabled people. For instance, they shouldn't make jokes about him hipping leg day just because he is a paraplegic and he is in a wheelchair. It seems that posting to YouTube gives some disabled people a sense of purpose and allows them to advocate in a new way. Kenny's story is a bit different because he was in the military and became disabled as a result of an accident. He never mentioned in an moment while he was speaking to me, but he said he's always been pretty confident, so maybe that has something to do with it. He seems to have connected with a lot of other disabled people while he was in rehab after his accident. Thank you so much for speaking with me. So, what made you want to start your YouTube channel?
What made me start my YouTube channel? Well, first I wanted to hear how I sound because everybody say my voice sounds funny. So that's what really made me start my YouTube channel. But then as it started going along, I said maybe I could bring light to the disabled and handicapped community and get people to try to accept us as people and not burdens. So that's the main reason I started my YouTube channel.
Yeah, and growing up, did you see a lot of disability or representation or no?
Growing up, I was in special education growing up, and I shouldn't have been put in special education, but it was a blessing that I was able to be around other people that had disabilities.
Yeah, and
I learned a lot from that, being a part of that.
Yes. So, do you think that impacted how you see your disability?
Did it impact? Say it again.
Did being around other disabled people impact how you saw yourself?
Yes, it impacted me a lot. As a child, I was depressed a lot as a child. I've tried to commit suicide as a child. So when I didn't succeed in it, I said it's the reason why I'm still here. I may not know that reason as a child, but as I got older, I figured out I'm here for a reason. I'm here to bring light to other kids that went through the same thing I did. And try to make sure that parents don't ignore their child when the child is going through something. Pay attention to that child when that child says, "Mama, I don't feel good," or "I don't like myself."
And so is that part of the reason why you want to be on YouTube?
Yes, I wanted to be on YouTube to educate parents, to, notice the red signs or the red flags, and to teach parents to not to, just because your child has a physical disability, don't mean that they have a mental as well. Because just because your child has a physical disability, don't mean that they should be placed in a special education program. Because you could stunt their growth mentally. And that's what was me a little bit. Because I got a physical disability, not a mental. So with that being done to me, it kind of made me a little slow, just a little bit. But, you know, I just try to teach parents how to, you know, not go for the quick, easy fix when it comes to a disabled child.
Do you think YouTube is a good platform for disabled people?
I think it's a good platform, but not a good platform, because you do have people that like to come on your platform and make you feel small.
Yeah.
You know, want to disrespect you because you are disabled.
Yes.
But I feel like you have to you have to have a tough shell to be on any social media. Because if you do not have a tough shell, you are gonna crumble.
Yes.
And I tell people that get a tough skin. Because if you don't be on social media. Please don't.
So has being on YouTube impacted the way that you see herself?
Yes, it has. It has made me stronger over the years. Because when I first started, I cared about everything somebody said about me on social media. But as I got to, you know, actually getting into it, I don't care no more what people say about me on social media, especially on YouTube. It's just somebody that's got the phone in the hand doing like this, or a keyboard. So it don't bother me no more. I don't care anymore what people think about me.
How long have you been on YouTube?
My 5-year anniversary is coming up on the 15th.
Oh, wow.
5-year anniversary is coming up on the 15th. And before that, I'm going to be doing my first comedy show.
Oh, what's it going to be about?
The comedy show is called the Fudge's End of the Year Comedy Show. And it's going to be here on Zoom. If you want to get your ticket, you can either go to my bio on Instagram, or you can go to his bio at 50 shades _ of _ fudge and get the tickets.
Okay. And like, have you noticed that you gotten opportunities from being on YouTube, like being in the comedy show?
Yes. Basically, I didn't really want to do comedy, but I was introduced to a comedian who was in the wheelchair. But he didn't start out as a person in the wheelchair. He had a back tumor that landed him in the wheelchair. So I was introduced to him. His name was Jay Wills. And I was introduced to him. You know, he was trying to get me to do comedy. But I kept saying, man, I'm not going to do comedy. I'm scared. No. He was like, Shaquena, we need more people in the disabled and handicapped community on stage doing comedy, telling our life through jokes. And before I could even think about doing comedy or even telling him I've decided to do it, he passed away. So now I'm doing it, and I'm gonna do it in his name.
Yeah, that's really great that you want to continue his legacy and just like do it.
Right. But yeah, I'm gonna do my first show on the 14th of December, and I'm terrified, but I'm gonna do it.
Is there anything else you would like people to know?
Well, what I would like for people to know is that just because I have a disability, do not make me a burden to you or anybody else. It makes me a human being. It makes me have feelings, emotions, and I'm not a robot. And it does not make you look bad if you want to date me, because I'm a human being. I'm a female, and I have wants. I have needs. Do not treat me no different than you would able-bodied female. Don't let my wheelchair be the factor of you choosing one woman over me. Don't let my wheelchair be that factor. Because if it's that factor, then you're gonna upset me. You're gonna make me feel real small about myself, and that's not cool to make somebody feel bad because they are in a wheelchair or they're blind or they're deaf. That's just the way God made us, and you can't judge us on something that we cannot change.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today.
You are so welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Shaquena's story is also a bit different because she was born with her disabilities behind a bifida, but she says being in special ed and being around other disabled people did really influence how she looked at herself as a disabled person. And one of the things that stuck out to me about Shaquena's story was that through YouTube, she was able to make a lot of connections and have a lot of opportunities she might not have had otherwise, which again is kind of what I've been saying about YouTube, is it can be a place where people can both connect and find new opportunities. Like she said, she met this guy named Jay Wheels, who was like a comedian, and he wanted her to do a comedy show. Okay, so why did you start your YouTube channel?
What made me want to start it?
Yes.
So I was actually in school at the time for broadcasting. So I was learning how to be a reporter for TV, how to write stories, how to talk to a camera, how to present, that sort of thing. And you really only do one semester of TV work when I was in school. So once I finished that semester, I wanted to keep up that skill. I wanted to continue to talk to a camera so that it was something I never really felt nervous by in case I ever got a job in that field. So that's how the channel started. At the time, I also ran what you would call prolific, I guess, for the Sailor Moon community, Sailor Moon Tumblr. So I kind of had the two merged at the beginning. So if you go back to my channel, the first however many videos are all Sailor Moon content. I talked about the manga, I talked about the anime, talked about the musicals, I talked about everything to do with Sailor Moon. And then eventually I ran out of Sailor Moon stuff to talk about. So I moved into just talking about whatever, and now it's mainly just makeup and vlogs.
Yeah, and have you ever received any negative comments regarding your disability?
Oh yeah, a lot. I am of the generation that's been on the internet since I was very young. So like I had a MySpace, I had all of that. So it wasn't really a surprise to me when I started getting rude comments, and I still get them every now and then. It doesn't happen as much as it used to, but I also I used to cover more newsy topics. I kind of shied away from that because I don't really want my channel to ever become like my job. So I work in news as my real job, so I kind of stopped that. But back when I used to do videos about anything sort of topical, and anybody who disagrees with you, particularly on the internet, I'm sure you know, like they don't ever argue with you about your points. They argue with you and they choose your disability instead. Yeah. So in particularly, I did a video once. Now it's even funnier, but in hindsight at the time, it was Kat Von D who owned a big makeup brand. She sort of announced that she wasn't going to be vaccinating her baby. Yeah. Okay. So I did a whole video basically expressing my disappointment in Kat Von D, particularly as a brand owner, for her anti-vax stance. And I remember there were a bunch of comments that were like, the vaccines gave you your disability. And I was like, that is fundamentally doesn't make any sense. But there were a bunch of comments like that on that one, and that one made me laugh. And then I did another video at one point. Henry Cavill, like Superman, did an interview where he talked about how the Me Too movement kind of ruined courting people, and he was like, now I feel like I can't pursue a woman anymore, and blah blah blah. And I basically did a whole video about how stupid I thought that was. And the sort of the men's rights activist side of the internet found that video, and so you can imagine that there were a lot of comments like that. Eventually I just privated that video because I was like, it didn't bother me, but I was like, this is ending up on the wrong parts of the internet. I don't want it over there anymore. Yeah, so I definitely have got those comments. I get them less now that I don't really do news anymore on my channel, but I definitely have got them.
Has being on YouTube changed the way that you see yourself?
Has it changed how I see myself? That's a good question. Yes and no. I mean, I think I have a pretty good grasp on the kind of person I am and the things that I like and what I do and some of my more annoying mannerisms and that sort of thing that I edit out all the time. But at the same time, like, I don't know, it definitely, I'm really good with a camera, and I think that's something that I've sort of become because of YouTube, and I'm a really fast editor, and so in that sense I sort of recognize that those are skills that I have that I wouldn't have without YouTube. But other than that, I really don't think it's changed how I see myself because I'm pretty self-aware in that sense.
And did you see this ability of a presentation growing up?
No, I can't think of a single time growing up at all that I saw any. It would be like one of those things where, like, it's like a Where's Waldo game, right? Like if you ever saw a person in a wheelchair in anything, you'd be like, oh my god, look, oh my god, that's amazing, because really... it was awful. There definitely is slightly more now, but even now, it's like, that's one of the things that really frustrates me about the representation matters movement, because it's true, representation does matter, but they get so focused on the sort of race and sexual orientation side of it that they forget all about us. And it's like, they can have a cast where one's black and one's Asian and everyone's gay, and it's a great little, but they're all able-bodied, and none of them have any sort of mental disability, and no one ever even thought to include someone like that. And so I can't think of, I mean, I learned of a couple when I got older, like Batgirl, Barbara Gordon being in a wheelchair and that sort of thing, but I really didn't have any when I was younger. Yeah, and is that part of why you wanted to make a YouTube channel and like get in like broadcasting and stuff? 100%, totally. It was one of those things where if I had to grow up with no disabled person to look up to, I, in sort of my own really selfish way, thought that I could maybe be that for another disabled girl growing up. She could see someone who maybe looked like her, or even if it's not the same disability as me, like someone else who has some sort of disability, doing a media job, doing something. So that's sort of what I think of anytime I ever did get a negative comment. It would be like, if it was just something stupid, I would leave it. But if it was something about like my disability specifically that I thought if I was another disabled girl, I could project that onto myself, I would remove it. Because I was like, I don't want, I've actually had messages from like younger people on my channel and on my Instagram before, and I don't want them to see those things. Yeah. And what would your advice be to other disabled people that want to be on YouTube? Just do it. Like, honestly, there aren't enough of us, so the stronger in numbers we can be, the better. But also, I hate to say this because the world shouldn't be like this, but you do kind of have to go into it with a thick skin, because particularly when you're on the internet, most of these people don't have the balls to say these things to you in person, but they're going to comment them. They're going to be anonymous. They're going to log into some kind of throwaway YouTube account and write whatever. And And you kind of have to go into it knowing that. And especially in the beginning when your channel is small, you almost get more of it then than when your channel is bigger. And you can't let that get to you because that's exactly what people like that want. They want to stop that channel from growing. I can't remember her name, but there's a beauty YouTuber who's quite big. She's got a couple 100,000 subscribers and she has a facial deformity of sorts. She's got like big face tumors. You know who I mean, right?
Yeah.
I can only imagine, I should say, that particularly when her channel was smaller, she got awful comments because her disability is even more visible than mine is. So I can only imagine that people were probably awful to her, but she's someone that I even look up to, even though I think she's like 10 years younger than me, because she didn't let it get to her and she kept going and she persevered. And now she's like one of the bigger beauty YouTubers because she just did it anyway. And I really admire that about her.
And are you around other disabled people growing up or no?
Not particularly, if I'm being honest with you. When I was in elementary school, there was me and there was one boy who had pretty severe autism, like to the point where he was verbal, but like not really. And then there was another boy who had cerebral palsy. He can walk, but he's... Oh, is that what you have too?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, but other than that, like I really didn't have a ton. And then when I was in high school, there was like a special needs class, but because my disability doesn't affect my brain, I didn't need that class. So outside of that class, there was none. Most of the disabled kids were in that class because they needed, I think there was a deaf girl in there and they needed all sorts of different accommodations that I didn't need. So really, like, I have gone through most of this life with most of the other disabled people I know being internet friends.
And do you think that affected the way that you see yourself or the way you see disability in general?
100%. If I can just be completely honest with you and admit that I have been a total jerk. Like when you are a disabled person, but you're not mentally disabled at all, I didn't even know this about myself until like maybe 5 years ago, but I had like a really strong internalized ableism about me. And it would be like when I was a kid, especially because I think it was largely because the other disabled kids were boys, but also they needed like help that I didn't need. So I always had this like gross mentality of like, well, I'm disabled, but like I'm not like them.
Yes.
Exactly.
I've done that too.
Exactly. And I did that a lot in my life. And I look back and I'm like, that's such a douchebag way to be. Like, I should have been an ally to them as the one who can't speak up and as the one who can't do things.
Yeah.
And so as I've grown up, like, I don't know that it necessarily is because of my YouTube channel, but I think it's just a matter of maturing and getting older. Like, I definitely don't see that anymore. These are definitely people that I would rather wish I would have been friends with, wish I would have aligned myself with, especially as someone who could have advocated for them. But that's not, like, I gotta be honest, like, that's not the way it was. Even all the way until, like, probably the early parts of college, I was like, well, I'm disabled, but I'm not, like, the disabled kids. You know what I mean? Like, it's a weird superiority complex that I shouldn't have had, but I did.
And what made you change? Like, what changed your mindset?
I don't know that it was anything in particular. If anything, it might have been learning. This is so weird. It might have been learning about like other people's internalized like misogyny that made me look at myself, and I was like, I don't think I have internalized misogyny. I've always thought women were better than men, and I was like, but like, what is wrong with me? And I was like, well, I'm kind of a bitch to other disabled people. I probably shouldn't do that, and that sort of made me think about it, I guess. And then I was like, wow, that's awful.
Yeah.
That's just the worst way to be. And I think just over time, I was like, that's not cool. I shouldn't have done that. You know?
Yeah, and like, I can relate to that. So I think it's a pretty normal way to feel, especially because of the way that society is set up. So we're almost like programmed to like look down upon other people.
especially other disabled people, because there's so few of us represented that we always feel like we're fighting for even one spot at the table.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, well, if there's only one spot on the table, it's gonna be for me. So like, and it's exactly that, right? And like, especially I can imagine for you, especially because you're like so pretty, that you were like the other disabled people, whatever. And like, I did the same thing too. I'll admit, and it's just like the worst way to be. And it's the sort of thing that I think maybe this next generation, because they have social media in the way that they do have it, they're probably going to be smarter than us, and they'll probably get out of that before we did. But you know, that's just the way it was.
Thank you so much for speaking with me. Is there anything else you want people to know?
Is there anything else I want people to know? I think it's just the importance of like accepting and just like allowing disabled people to have this space in society where everyone else already has it. Like I said, that's one of my biggest frustrations with the Representation Matters movement, is that we've been completely left out by it. Like there's all this focus on, and like I want to be clear, it's not a problem that there's lots of more people of color and things. Like of course there is, but I just also think there should be at least a spot for disabled people. And sometimes if that spot doesn't exist, you have to make it yourself. And so that's part of the reason why I started a YouTube channel and why I work in news and that sort of thing.
Thank you so much for speaking with me.
No problem, Erica.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm just running to you. Yeah, this is like, oh my gosh, stop it.
My conversation with Abby was, I don't want to say it was the most interesting conversation, because I think the conversation I had with everybody was very interesting, but I think Abby had some really good insights, and she talked about like lateral ableism, which is ableism against people with disabilities that are different than yours, and I think that's a really important topic to talk about, because I feel like a lot of people don't talk about that, but I feel like we really need to, because it's very prevalent in the disabled community, and the only way that we can get rid of that is by acknowledging it. And I also think Abby had a lot of insights about representation. Sorry, there's a bug in my face. She had a lot of insights about representation, and how like back when me and Abby were growing up, we had like no representation, and now we do have some. But in my opinion, and right now is when I'm gonna add a bit of my opinion to this, I feel like a lot of the representation is what I would call token representation, and that's like one disabled person in the entire movie. And I feel like a lot of times it's also the socially acceptable disabilities, and I don't want to dismiss any representation, because it's great that we have actors like Hallie Stroker being in like movies and on Broadway, but my issue is that I don't see a lot of diversity within the disability representation. Like, I don't see a lot of disabled people of color. I don't see a lot of disabled people of different sizes. I don't see people with speech impairments like, I feel like Hollywood does the bare minimum and will, like, be like, okay, we'll just have a person in a wheelchair with no other disability. And that's not enough. That's not enough in 2021. It's not enough ever. And I really hope that can change. And that was one of the reasons why I started my YouTube channel. And so I think YouTube is a really great platform because people can meet each other and they don't have to worry about like ableist casting directors that say, oh, we can't cast you because nobody's gonna want to see someone like you in a movie, or nobody's gonna want to have to be patient with your speech, so we would rather cast somebody who's disabled but doesn't have a speech impairment. Because, and this is going to be a little bit of my story, growing up, I didn't see anybody like me on television. I didn't see anybody whose muscles were spastic or who had a speech impairment that can sometimes make me hard to understand. But I really think representation matters, because I really think it does shape how people see themselves. And I think a lot of people underestimate the power of representation. And the good thing about the digital age and having platforms like YouTube is we don't have to wait for Hollywood to finally decide they want to give us a token seat at the table. We can just go out and do what we want to do and be like, hey, this is me, and I don't care what anybody thinks. And if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. But then you can choose to watch other disabled people and learn a bunch of different things. Like we have Kyra, who does a lot of vlogging, so we can see what her daily life looks like. We have Kenny, who does fitness, so we can have disability-friendly workouts. We have Shaquena that does a lot of commentary, and she does a lot of different things. Like, she often will talk about current events. I know recently I saw she made a video about Kyra Richardson. So, I mean, we have disabled people on this platform doing a bunch of different things. It's not one size fits all. And I think that's what makes YouTube really great, is that we could have disabled people doing anything they want to do. You don't have to just fit in a box and only talk about disability. And you also don't have to fit into a box where you never talk about disability. You can talk about disability when you want, however much you want, and nobody can stop you from doing that. I mean, granted, you still have to follow YouTube's community guidelines, but like, pretty much if you stay within a reasonable boundaries where you're not doing anything offensive or harmful, you could pretty much do whatever you want. And I hope that that's what this project shows people, is that YouTube isn't just a platform where you could upload videos. It's a platform where you can find yourself. It's a platform where you can become an advocate. It's a platform where you can connect with other people. It's a platform that can be empowering for disabled people. And I mean, of course, a lot of the people I've talked about have reported getting negative comments, especially related to their disability. I myself have had my fair share of negative comments, especially on my videos that have gotten a lot of views. A few honorable mentions that I guess I'll add to this project is I had somebody tell me I should go to AA because clearly I was drunk because of the way I talk and the way I move. And I'm like, no, I'm not drunk. And even if I was, like, this is how I talk. This is how I move. I can't change that. But I can change how people perceive me. Another comment I got that really annoyed me was, clearly you have mental issues, and that is the only reason why anybody would ever agree with you or support you. And to that person I said, like, maybe you don't understand this, but people can agree with disabled people and support disabled people out of something other than pity. Like, not every people don't just like me because they feel sorry for me. They like me because I'm creative. I can be sarcastic. I speak my mind. I like to write. And I try to be a kind person. And I hope that this project can help humanize disabled people. Because, like, Kenny and Shaquena and Kyra, they're all very different people. But the one thing they have in common is they're a part of the disabled community. And, well, two things they have in common, because they're also YouTubers. But, I mean, it's not one size fits all. And that's what's so great about this platform, is we have a ton of different people doing a ton of different things. And nobody can tell them not to do that.